Welcome back to the Books Brothers podcast, where each week we read books and discuss them. Our goal is to become better men by learning from the books we read and being challenged by the conversations we have together. We hope you also get something out of our discussions. The Books Brothers are currently reading through Scarcity Brain by Michael Easter. This is Adam, and I will be leading our discussion today on chapters 9 and 10. I found these chapters fascinating for Laura Zera's survivalist approach, insights into materialism, and our inherent desire for exploration and knowledge. They stress the importance of experiences over possessions and our enduring curiosity. We hope you enjoy listening as much as we enjoyed the conversation. As usual, if you have any thoughts on the chapters or our discussion, we would love to hear from you by emailing us at connect@booksbrotherspodcast.com or on Instagram at booksbrotherspodcast.
We're doing a steps challenge at work, and I'm in the run walk category out of 10 people, and we've got multiple people training for like a 5 or a half marathon in it. So I know I'm gonna lose, but I'm trying to step up my game. I'm currently like over 2 weeks. I'm like 50,000 steps behind the guy in first place.
Oh, dang.
So I'm going to be running more and trying to up it. I don't think I'm going to win, which winner gets like $150 towards a new pair of shoes, like running shoes. But I'm currently in 5th place out of 10.
Nice. How many steps are you averaging per day?
Dude, it's hard to get over 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is, man.
I mean, especially when it's negative 14 here.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
There were multiple days that I only got like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when your job is to sit and eat chocolate all day.
Yeah. It doesn't really set you up for success, does it?
Yeah.
You can only go to the bathroom so many times.
Yeah.
Wait, is that how they make the chocolate?
All right, so I get to lead one of these finally. I decided to do it in the week where I'm, interviewing for my next job, and because why not? So chapter 9 is
Masagi.
all about Masagi. So Easter talks about stuff in chapter 9. And starts out introducing to us Laura Zera, who is awesome. She's a survivalist. She doesn't consider herself that, but that's essentially what she is. And he's riding with her to Montana, where they're going to do some exploration. And Zera talks about a lot of interesting things, like how she was aspiring to be a doctor and even in college for that. And then, her friend attempted suicide and she walked in, and that changed her life and made her want to do what she actually wanted to do, which was be out in nature and exploring. And she realized she didn't need all of the things that we think that we need in order to just go do that. So she's an interesting character. But then there's so many good questions you can come up with from this chapter. Basically, he goes into, impulse buying and talking about how that increased during the pandemic and how that can impact impulse purchases, in your relationships. And then talks about, the human tendency for wanting material goods and how that used to be beneficial. And now it's we still have that yearning in our brain, but we have an abundance of things or stuff now. So it's a little bit different. And then, essentially talks about the historical context of all that as it relates to us and pre-industrial revolution and post-industrial revolution and how things have changed with machines essentially kind of stacking on top of each other. And we invent one machine, and that means we have to make another machine to keep up with the other machine. It just becomes this thing that keeps scaling. So it talks about some of the, triggers behind compulsive buying and some of the decision making that goes on there. Talks about some environmental and mental health considerations on all of that. And Laura Zera talks about a lot of things that she's gained from being out in nature, such as, creativity and all the things that I'm sure we'll get into more of that. But then the chapter ends with them differentiating the terms gear versus stuff. That's a long-winded summary of that chapter. Yeah, so chapter 9, this is just the first question I wrote down was, Laura Zera talks about being a survivalist. Do you guys know what survivalist flavor you are? Are you
I like the prepper, man. I like the doomsday prepper vibe.
Nice.
Heck yeah, man. Oh yeah, that would be so cool to just be like, no matter what happens, I've got a bunker somewhere with food and everything else.
Yeah. What are the other ones, Thomas? There's the hippie one. But anyway, that's more of a joke question. I just had to leave it at that. But
yeah, we'll have to we need to find those though. That was like kind of fun to read.
Yeah. So I guess he talks about how we oftentimes will conform to a lot of societal or personal narratives. Can you guys think of anything that you have conformed to, I guess, in order to, appear better than others or to feel like you fit in with others?
Well, right off the gate, that question kind of reminds me of why we love goods, like pages 178, 179. So he mentions 3 reasons why we love goods. So having stuff helps us survive. Having stuff shows off our status. So like cars today, I also thought that it was pretty cool or a good call out when he goes, we value hard to get over popular. So it's like that fancy watch versus the common watch is we've put more value in that, or at least people that can afford that stuff over, oh yeah, this is a good solid watch. Like people want things that are rare, one of a kind. And then having stuff shows that we belong with others. So really that sense of belonging rather than like I'm better than you is what he was calling versus the other status. But Flez, I guess getting back to your question, I don't know. There's been some things like just popping up recently where it's like, how do I almost keep up with others? Which is silly because it's like living a life of comparison. But
I've definitely felt this way about our home. And Thomas and I think I've talked about this some, living in a different region outside of the Midwest. It's easy to compare what we have versus homes in the Midwest and, in general, like living in Phoenix, it's home sizes are just smaller here. But I think as it relates to my friend groups, one thing I think I struggle with at times is wanting to have a really nice and presentable home. And, whenever we have friends over, it's really important to me that we have things that are, everything's cleaned up and that we have nicer things. And that's one area I think that I've seen where I personally try to keep up with other folks, as Rob is mentioning there, that I don't always love. Ruth and I were just talking about this as we were walking before I got on here. And it kind of relates to one of the other questions you had, Adam, about one of the questions you had was about how do you handle impulse purchases. And I think that over time is, you just acquire stuff when you have a home. And I recall my parents' house have this space underneath the stairs that just there's a lot of extra stuff. And there's nothing per se like wrong with that, but I think that a lot of families just do that. They just acquire stuff the longer they've been in a home. And in relation to this and kind of what you mentioned, even your next question here about how do you handle like purchases in the home, I think that it's really easy to get caught up in what other people are doing or like what your friend group is doing. And it's definitely something that I'd like to work on. I remember back when Ruth and I were pretty early in our marriage, we did a Dave Ramsey financial peace class. And I recall that they asked all the couples who were involved, what's the maximum amount that your spouse can spend without telling the other spouse, essentially. And it was fascinating. So fascinating. And so Ruth and I were probably 25, 26 at the time. And our number was, I'm thinking it was like $40 at that time. And it's a little bit larger now. It's still not that drastically higher. But I recall some couple's number was like $1,500.
Wow.
Bring up the cost of something they would buy. And maybe that's you guys. And so, judgments if that is. It's just not, to me, I'm like, oh man, that's just not how Ruth and I do finances. But yeah, I kind of segued on there a bit, but yeah, I think my one I'd really think I struggle more with is like having a nice presentable home. And I kind of linked to the other thing because, we're talking about, you have a kid and it's just like, it seems like you just acquire so much more stuff overnight. I'm sure Matt and Garrett, you guys recall that, or maybe you're still living in that era. Like, well, your possessions double overnight, it seems like.
Quick note on Stalen's house, though.
Yeah.
Stalen's house is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
There's no way I'd rather spend Cinco de Stalen than at the Oasis there in Phoenix. It's awesome.
Man, that's funny.
And I also feel like, yeah, Stalen, you might feel that way, but at the same time, like, you worked really hard on your house. Like, you did a lot of work physically to make your house what it is. So I have to commend you on that. I would say I totally agree with the fact that when you grow up in the Midwest, you kind of get brainwashed into like graduate school, buy a house, get married, have a couple cars and some toys and a yard, have kids. I've really had to fight through not feeling bad that wasn't my path, because I always envisioned that to be what was going to happen to me if I was successful, right? So I would love to buy a place here in Hawaii, but I'm not going to be house poor. And I would say one thing that I have a hard time doing is, like, Hawaii is a very transient place. So you get a lot of friends that move in, move out, buy new stuff, upgrade, and then they have all this free stuff that's like pretty nice, and they want to get rid of it. And they're like, hey, do you want this? Do you want that? And then you end up feeling like you have to take things, and then that clutters up your place, and then you have a hard time keeping your space clear of clutter. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing I struggle with. I'm not like a huge consumer of most anything else. I guess when it comes to like vehicles, we've probably bought vehicles a little earlier than we had to, but it was never one of those things where we just like bought a new car because we wanted one, or, like a new cell phone because it was the newest one, or anything like that. So I guess for me, it's like getting rid of stuff is my main issue, not buying too much.
Regarding what you were saying, Thomas, I think starting a job in the nonprofit world where you had to fundraise your own salary really set the tone for what we could live off of and what we could get by without and with. And 8-9 years later, where our income has significantly increased compared to that, it is a memory and an experience that I look back on that's still very formative in evaluating if I really need something. And sometimes I need to grow out of that. I can overthink a purchase that is $20 or $30, and I just need to pick which bunch of bananas or whatever. I can't think of a good example. That's a bad example, but I can overanalyze things that maybe from my experience, it used to be a big purchase and it's not. But then at the same time, the question you had, Flez, about the 1 minute is 1 minute. If you have to think longer than that, you're probably convincing yourself you need it. I think that was a helpful exercise. We just got a car today, actually, and this
Super
has definitely
Outback?
been what? Yeah. That's funny. That's funny. No, not a Subaru Outback, but even shopping for a car, I've just noticed that our standards and our requirements have changed. A car that used to be really good gas or really good mileage, I used to buy cars that had over 100,000 miles and they would last me 5 to 7 years. And now that's off the table. So I just have noticed that my requirements or my own standards have changed, and evaluating, is that actually helpful for my life? Sometimes it can be. And then sometimes it's because of what we were talking about, what stuff brings us a sense of belonging or a sense of status. And shopping for a new car and evaluating the trade-offs of, well, does it have a panoramic moonroof? And it's like, how often are we actually going to care about that? 0 out of 100 times.
You're looking at that Subaru Forester, though, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. So there's these new features and gadgets, and if it only costs a few more $1,000 to get this upgraded edition.
Did you get ground effects too, or?
Yeah,
ground effects. The lights underneath the car.
Does it have NOS?
I did not.
I mean, to go back to this, if you're
spinner rims.
Garrett, go back to the other thing you were saying though. If you're struggling with like figuring out your bananas, like hit up Fruit Financial.
Yeah. I'll call Thomas for a referral. Yeah. I don't know why I thought of that. It's probably because I listened to the episode, and I listened to the episode first thing in the morning on Tuesday to get a download in, help the stats. But
I like that this chapter mentioned that Michael Easter bought a Subaru Outback. He traded his car. He bought a Subaru Outback.
And his wife looked at him like, "Bro, what's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
He didn't really have any good reason why he did that. So what'd you land on?
What did we land on? We got we bought our first new car ever, which again was a whole process of we've only ever bought used cars, and we got a Toyota Grand Highlander hybrid. And so that'll be available it'll get here next month, or actually we're coming up to Kansas City. So because
G-Money is rolling heavy. I like it.
Legends. So,
hey, those Toyotas, they'll run forever. You know that.
Yeah, that's the goal. We hope to have a couple more kiddos, so got to have room to grow. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a 15, 20-year car. But
just don't put diesel in it.
Yeah.
So one thing that you're kind of describing is, I like, this is the quote that I liked. He says that invention is the mother of necessity, and not necessity is the mother of invention. I liked that part a lot. That's how it is in abundance. We don't really need anything, so we invent things that we think that we need.
I feel like when you hear the way that they marketed the iPhone, that seems like that really hits on that too, because it was like you didn't know you needed this.
Oh yeah,
this is so different and so innovative.
That's the whole goal of marketing, though, is to make you need something that you didn't even know you needed, or make you want something that you
guys seen the whole Stanley Cup thing?
Yeah,
I don't know about Stanley at all. What are you talking about, Thomas?
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah, Garrett, how do you feel about that viral? Is that like throwing up red alarms at work? Like, we can't deal with this Stanley Cup.
No, we got a lot of respect for them, but I think we're ready. Talking about marketing, we're doing a brand refresh, like a whole new brand identity this year. And our goal is to, one of the many goals is we want people to know who we are so that we stop getting called the Stanley dupe.
Oh, come on, man. You can't do them like that.
I mean, they were first to market, and their market cap and how much they're selling, it's off the charts. I mean, it is crazy. It's, a lot of respect to them. And
I saw a video though of people. I mean, is it respectable for the folks that are like getting in fights at Target to get a Stanley Cup and pay $45 for a cup? Like, that to me sums up a lot of what this chapter's about.
Well, if you guys want some quick, easy arbitrage money, I think the demand's gone down a little bit a year later, but there's Stanleys on eBay right now for $300-$400.
Oh my God.
I mean, our equivalent, we call them the Trek. Our Treks, there was a time when people would buy them and we'd see them resold for like $200. So
I love that it's like the dad company though before this. Like I recall like my dad having a Stanley thermos. Like we have a Stanley thermos.
I wasn't really a man until I got a Stanley thermos.
Yeah.
I just think of the NHL when I hear Stanley Cup.
Yeah. I only think of Stanley Steamer, to be honest.
I got him. Don't look that one up on Urban Dictionary.
I think it's the Cleveland Steamroller you're thinking of.
I actually don't think Stanley Steamer's on there, but it should be.
Wasn't that an actual business?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, dude. That was along with Penske's, dude.
I think in 40-Year-Old Virgin, he mentions a Cleveland Steamroller.
But to your point, getting back to the book a little bit and the Stanley craze and the large tumbler craze, I've thought about the scarcity loop a lot with some of the marketing and sales promotions our company has done. I think of Christmas time, we ran a promo, a limited drop every day for like 7 days, 5 or 7 days of a different Christmas design right after Thanksgiving. And it was a 500 to 1,000. And when I started, it shows how much I've grown just professionally. But before, I would have said, hey, you want to develop as many tumblers as you can for everyone to be able to buy one. You want to like cap that out. And yes, obviously you need to meet customer demand. That's simple economics. But with unique drops and special edition, it's scarcity loop. So we would say 8 a.m. and it was a way we had just released an app. So we have an app now. So, hey, if you download the app, you'll get earlier access to buying this unique drop. And it drops at 8 a.m. and poor folks in Thomas's Island and in the Pacific time zone, we sold out every morning in less than 10 minutes, like 500 to 1,000 of these and it was just gone. And it was that, what is it? The high repeatability with the unpredictable rewards. It's like, man, if I log on, I might be able to get one, and no one else other than 1,000 people are going to get one. And what a
that's not even a sale. That's full price, right?
Yeah, it was full price. Yeah, right. For sure.
I go into these waves. I don't know if it's like you guys, but I will literally wear clothes until there's holes in them. And then 2 of my khakis that I wear literally every day for like the past 5 years, both of them started getting holes in them. And I was still even like wearing them to the office with minor holes. Mind, I also wear them like every single day. And
well, if you have cool boxers on, that's okay.
I get into this loop where I won't buy anything for like years. And so it's almost like a challenge. Now let me see how long I can go. And then I hit like a quick loop where it's like, all right, now I'm going to go gobble up 5-6 pairs of pants and then just get it done. I hit into this quick loop where it's like, I'm not about shopping. I'm not about buying. But then when I am, I full send it.
Like on your calendar, like calendar reminder weeks out, Rob buys pants for the next decade.
No, it's like I won't shop for years, and then I'll literally go and drop $300 on clothes.
Gobble up those pants.
Hey, next pants,
Republic.
I had a while where I was like every Friday. So I literally in my notes app, I had a list of every type of clothing item you can think of: shirt, t-shirts, or like shorts, jeans, nice long sleeve shirt, hoodie. And every Friday, I bought one thing off of that.
Wow.
For a while.
Dang.
Nice.
One thing.
Like, I mean, I guess it's probably essentially the same.
Hey, man. You got to respect the drip.
Rob, I'm the same way, though. I never buy clothes for myself. Now that I've been married for a while and I have in-laws, they are always the ones to buy clothes for me. I rarely buy clothes. Hardly ever. And I will wear them until they have holes in them too.
I hate it too. Yeah.
It's scary though, because then your style is that of like a 65-year-old woman or something like that.
Dude, I've been working out in like the same workout shirts for like the past who knows how long. And Marianne finally got me like a bunch of new shirts.
Oh, good for her. But it's
just like, I don't care. Like the stuff it's just.
Yeah, who are we trying to impress now? We're already married.
No, that's not that. You do care. They're very nice shirts, but your old shirts were perfectly fine too.
I have to care now.
They still serve their purpose.
And I don't think I think those are admirable things to an extent that you, and I can relate with this as well, we're pushing against that scarcity brain.
Yeah.
I have enough clothes. I have enough shoes. A year ago for New Year's was 10 years of when I first met Brooke. And I still had the same shirt that I wore the night that we met. And so I don't wear it anymore. It's like, it looks a little out of style now. And so, but I was like, I'm still going to wear it for New Year's, because 10 years later, I ended up getting rid of it. But case in point that I had the same shirt for a decade. I still have some of the same workout clothes that have lasted since college.
Was it that pink polka dot one? Or?
I still have my Theta Chi jerseys. Yeah.
So I'm realizing right now, this
can't really donate those again.
Oh, Stalin, what is that?
This was my soccer team I played on in elementary school.
Dude, I played on that. I played on the Avalanche. Did we play on the same soccer team? I played on the Avalanche. Yeah. We need to go back and look
at some of the pictures. I don't remember who being on that team, but yeah, like Bauman and...
Dang, that's like a 20-year-old hoodie.
Dude, still in good condition. It's got like one hole, but it's like a just kind of wear on the house home.
But now it's so old that it's called vintage, and it's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I saw it, like, what is that?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that until you were telling that story, Garrett. I was like, oh yeah, this is super old.
One final thing on this, when he shares all the statistics about how much more stuff we own today than 50, 100 years ago, even in our relatively short lifespans, I've noticed that with houses. My wife's grandma raised 5 kids in a 3-bedroom. It might be 1,500 square feet, like 1,200 square feet. And whenever I'm there, it's very hard to fathom how that was possible. How did 7 people live in this house? Single car garage. And she's lived there for 50 years. So fast forward, my parents built a house. The first house growing up, it had 2-car garage. The house they built had a 3-car garage, but the driveway started out as like a 2-lane driveway. And then it like opened up halfway. If that makes sense. You had to like curve over to get into the 3rd lane. Well, now our neighborhood has 3-car garages, but every lane is open. It's gradually gotten bigger. Several of our neighbors have golf carts for probably golfing, but then also driving around the neighborhood. And it's just fascinated me that I think it's that example I used when we moved to Denver, and my pastor made that comment about how the size of the rental truck will be how full of stuff you'll fill it. Like, you'll find a way. And I think that speaks to a little bit of that marketing is get a bigger house, because then you have to fill more stuff with it, and we'll create things to fill more stuff. And we have a 3-car garage, and I have like made a promise to myself, because I've seen when other people have their garage doors open, how full it is. And it's nice. And I've promised myself I will keep that 3rd garage door open, that whole space open for my mother-in-law, for my parents to park there, because I don't need to fill it with anything. I really don't. But there's that temptation of, well, I have this much space. Why don't we get a golf cart or fill in the blank? Yeah. And so I read these statistics, and it doesn't surprise me at all hearing these numbers of how much more stuff we have compared to 100 years ago.
You'll probably end up you'll probably get a boat one day.
It's crazy. He said that rental spaces are outnumbered, like
that was sad.
McDonald's,
Walmart's, yeah.
Which is crazy, because if you think about it, like the concept of it, I mean, I don't have one. I get that people might need to store a boat or whatever, like something seasonal in there. But doesn't it amaze you that we have so much stuff that people are like, I can't fit it all in my house, so I'm going to go pay to store it somewhere else, and I'm not really like going to use it. At that point, we're just paying to accumulate things, right, rather than like actually living. And I think, just to kind of sum up this chapter, it gets back to Zara and just what she was all about, right? So getting out into the wild, and the beginning of the chapter on page 174, where Michael's like, yeah, we live to get good grades, good job, and vacation on the weekends or on our actual vacation. And that like really hit me, because it's true, man. Like, so much of our society lives for the weekend, lives for 2 days of the week, or, you know, our 2 weeks, 3 weeks of vacation. And you've got somebody here who, yeah, she deals with a different kind of stuff, which Flez, you like hit on it. It's the gear. And I think it's really cool to see someone that's like, hey, I don't have a lot of stuff. I have gear. And I really like this quote a lot. Creativity and efficiency bloom under scarcity. So she finds value in solving problems with how little of stuff that she has. And it forces her to get more creative. It forces her to challenge herself. Michael Easter even says, no problem, no story. I thought that was a really good quote too, where what great story doesn't start out with typically a problem? Our car broke down and then we had to hitchhike, or we had to do this and blah, blah, blah. And we had to get out of this tough situation. And it's like, when do people really get to brag about like, well, I had the exact tool because I have all of these tools and I got out at the right moment? No, it's cool to see humans pressed up against a wall and to see how they overcome their circumstances. And he wrapped it up well in this chapter.
I actually lived this out over the weekend with my son. For those in the Midwest, you all know it was very, very cold. And in Oklahoma City, it was cold as well. I think the book, The Comfort Crisis, was also influencing me a little bit. But on Monday, I thought to myself, even though it's 10 degrees, I'm still taking the kids outside. We're going to build a snowman and we're going to get uncomfortable. And I realized I did not have snow pants for my 4-year-old. I thought I had the right size, but he's gotten so big, they're actually for my almost 2-year-old. And so I thought of this. I'm like, I could just easily drive them to the store and buy some new snow pants. But then by that time, 30 minutes has passed. The moment's over. So I'm like, okay, well, what can I use with less? And as silly as it sounds, I ended up using a trash bag. So I put on a pair of sweatpants on them, and then I got like a big trash bag, poked some holes in it. It had like the tie drawstring. I just tied it around his waist, put another pair of sweatpants. Zero complaints from him. We built our first ever snowman, at least in Oklahoma City. It was pretty hard because it was such dry powder. We had to like get a bunch of water and like pour it on the snow. But we had a great time, and we wouldn't have had that memory if I had spent that 30, 45 minutes getting him into the car, driving him to the store, finding the right size. And I don't think I probably would have done that if I had not read this chapter the day before.
That's awesome. That's what it's all about right there, right?
Yeah, it's not a life or death situation, but it was a story.
So I feel like I need to touch on some of the spiritual component of the end of this that I think is relevant and that I feel when I'm out in nature, which gets touched on more as well in chapter 10. But Zara describes her experience when she's in nature and she's searching for the antlers. And she talks about how she doesn't think about anything else when she's doing that. She's in the moment, present. There is no past problems. There are no future anxieties. And so there are a few things that came to mind in that. I feel that when I'm in nature. There are things I'll talk about in regards to the next chapter too with that. But one thing that I wanted to ask you guys, so like she's talking about how essentially the difference between stuff and gear is that stuff is just having things for the sake of it, and gear is that specific item has a higher purpose. And so do you think that there's potential that because we've reached this higher level of self-actualization, people may not necessarily think that they need as much? So then there's like less of a desire towards religion, and maybe it makes it harder for some people to appreciate faith. You have all this stuff. You have everything you need. What do I need hope for? So I don't know. I just want to bring that up. And I don't know if you guys thought about that at all in this, or if you had thoughts on that. Because I feel like that is a challenging thing for our society today. I think that can make it easy to doubt when you have, quote unquote, everything you need. So I feel like that is like an area of importance for discussion, since we're all believers here. Do you guys have any input on that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Flez. Having all the money available, all the stuff, technology to stay connected with people, at least where we live in our society in the United States, we rarely need anything. We are not fighting for our survival in most cases. We have all of our basic needs met, plus an abundance of things. And so I think a lot of people just don't see a need to place faith in a higher power, because looking in the past, most people didn't have access to everything they needed. A lot of people, they needed nature to provide food for them and shelter.
There was like more factors outside of their control, right? Like factors outside of the control.
So many things outside of their control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like farmers, they depend on rain and sunshine. And you can't control those things. But now we have technology where we can make artificial sunlight for plants. We can provide water to wherever we are. There's just not a need to depend on something that is out of your control. And I think that's a lot of where religion came into play, is you pray to a god for rain or something that you need to survive. And where is that need today?
I'm listening right now to Sapiens, and he talks about this a little bit. And he talks about how the modern day religions are political ideologies that we put our faith in. And yeah, it's like a good point, because you rely on these things for your security in a way that people looked at religion in the past, where, you know, some people would even say, as far as like, oh, we've evolved past the need of a religion. Yeah, I say that to say, like, that's not, I mean, absolute truth is absolute truth. You can't take away something if it's an absolute truth.
Yeah, and I think another part of it is jumping ahead to the next chapter, which is about information. We have so much information now that we can just look up anything and provide numbers and data on things to describe phenomena. We have all these expert scientists. I say that with quotations, experts. And but they have created these theories about like the creation of Earth, and we can get into that in chapter 10. But information also helps, or it doesn't help.
That's good, though, Matt. Good thoughts. Thanks for sharing.
It's a great question, Flez. I think you're spot on. I just sent a screenshot from the Pew Research, and over the last 5 decades, the religiously unaffiliated has grown, especially in the last 20 years. And that's when the rise of the internet really hit, and more access to information, probably. Maybe there's some correlation there.
I just wrote down in the stuff chapter, our possessions start possessing us. So I think that plays a role here, where so many people are seeking things rather than relationships, the relationship that matters the most. And they're getting lost in it and possessed by it.
I also wanted to say one last thing. Zara was describing how, because she doesn't have stuff and she doesn't have really a place to store stuff, she did a lot of hitchhiking. And that in and of itself, she described it as she got to meet new people just for a short period of time, where both of them were not tied to their possessions. They knew that their time was limited and they would likely never see each other ever again after that short ride. And the way that she describes her relationships, there was no bias. People were willing to share deep, dark secrets, and they cried with each other, just being able to share things because they didn't have to worry about stuff or what other people thought about them. And I thought that was really interesting. Why don't we have interactions that are more like that, where we can just open up to people and give people the benefit of a doubt that they are genuinely good people doing the best that they can with what they have?
I like that part too. Yeah, for sure.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors.
Do you ever text people you know you shouldn't after a few Jaeger bombs or fireball shots? Or do you have friends that are always making bad texting decisions after having too many drinks? Now introducing the Drunk Text Blocker. This app can be purchased in the App Store and interfaces with your text messages to prohibit you from texting certain individuals during certain hours. Why clean up the mess of your bad decisions the next morning when you can install the Drunk Text Blocker? Drunk Text Blocker. It's like putting your thumbs in jail for the night.
And now back to the show.
Okay, so chapter 10 is about information, and Easter talks about how he meets an astronaut named Mark Vandehee, and they talk about his experiences in space. And then we get into how humans are known for exploration, and dramatically more so than other animals. and some of the evolution there around being able to walk on 2 feet and use our hands, and then gets into the physiological benefits of exploring as as it relates to like brain health. And then Rob's favorite DRD4-7R gene, aka the wanderlust gene. Then it gets into some interesting stuff like the invention of the newspaper, which is from Benjamin Day, and how that dramatically shifted how we consume information. How it used to be more just your information is what's in front of you and present. And then the newspaper made it much broader. And ultimately what news is today, which is, the most catchy negative thing ever. And then specific example he uses that I've heard before from other books, the Boston Marathon bombing, and how individuals that were watching that the whole time, which I don't know about you guys, but I remember being in college, actually, Rob and Thomas, we lived together during that. But I definitely watched that. But anyway, people that watched the Boston Marathon on the news actually had much higher incidence of PTSD and mental health issues than people that were actually there in person.
Crazy.
So that's not the first time I've heard that example, but still crazy. He gets into how, we just want to keep consuming information and how, there's potential for information overload. And, one of my favorite things he talks about is in relation to the Pope and his example of how his editor wanted him to find out how much the Pope makes salary wise. And so he starts going online, doing all this research, looking up all this, trying to find it online. And he realizes all he had to do was pick up the phone and call the Vatican. It's just so simple. And I love that because it's so relevant for sales reps. It's like at the end of the day, you just got to go to the place or call the place. You can do all this research, but so that's why I like that. Then he talks about the last part was about Pokemon Go and how that was actually utilized in a positive way to get people to play video games, but be active, and the benefits of that, which I thought was really cool.
I love Pokemon Go.
Did you do it?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so then he ends with concluding on talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs a little bit, and that will lead into the next chapter on happiness. So I guess circling back, there's one part, you guys know how much I love meditation, so I just had to throw a question in there about that. There's one part where this astronaut, Mark Vandehee, is in space, and apparently it's a really challenge to just sit there in silence. And so at one day, they shut the lights out, and he just describes it as meditating in silence. So he's got his eyes open, and he just sits there. And it says he describes how hard that was initially, then the benefits of doing it. And so I just wanted to know, how many of you guys have... I know, Stalin, you tried to sit and meditate in silence, right? And you couldn't do it?
I'm not good at it. Yeah, I think I always end up thinking of a to-do list or something. And yeah, always something. I mean, I think the closest thing that I maybe do on occasion that would be close to meditation would be like camping, where you're just sitting out in nature. And I'm doing something. So it's not really the same as truly meditating on your thoughts, because I always end up thinking of a to-do list or feeling more stressed because all the stuff I could be doing with that time.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's meditating what you're doing when you're camping. It doesn't have to necessarily just be sitting on a zafu and closing your eyes. And has anybody else tried it? And so there's silence. Just sit in silence.
I actually think it's easier in complete silence than with sounds and stuff going on. That distracts me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I put earplugs in and noise canceling headphones or something, you kind of get into the zone quicker than if there's a bunch of stuff going on.
Well, from a prayer standpoint, yes, I sit in silence and pray that way. But so much of prayer is me talking to God. And when do we actually allow God to talk to us? And so when do we quiet ourselves, humble ourselves, subdue ourselves, and actually let him speak? So that is actually tying into one of my words of the year for 2024, which is still. So trying to be more still to not be going through the motions or going through prayer to where I'm offering up intentions, but rather letting him reveal those to me directly. So yes, but I need to do more of it. And it's something I'm committing to this year. I'm excited about it.
I've never really done it.
So then I'll fast forward to, the talk about human exploration. And this is something that I already do. And I like that he talks about this. I think, Rob, you asked me if I went and did that ruck the other day after I read this chapter. And I hadn't read the chapter yet. So I started rucking for sure because of Comfort Crisis and Peter Attia. So these two guys, or Dr. Attia and then this guy. That's kind of why I started getting into it. But then I can't really run when it's freezing out. And so I worked nights for FedEx. You just have to put on more clothes. I just, geared up and put a backpack on and threw 40 pounds in there and then went and did a hike. And man, there's nobody else out there. I got to be careful because there's ice. There's definitely more unknown things than normal. And I got this huge thing on me too. For me, though, that was like, man, I'm so happy doing that. That's when I'm like the most filled with joy, is doing stuff like that. That's what I thought about. I'm like, what is happiness? Which we'll talk about, I'm sure, next week. But that's a question if I get asked, like, are you happy by my mom? I tend to get really defensive, which is like, maybe I'm not happy. But I just see it a little bit differently. I see it as like there are moments throughout a day where, I might have that feeling. Maybe because I have like an entrepreneurial brain of like, I can't be happy until this, but that's not healthy. But the moments where I feel happy are when I'm in nature and doing something hard like that. And I think it goes back to the being present, being out in 0-degree cold weather with 45 pounds on your back and you're doing a longer hike. You can literally feel in the moment. You're not going to think about other stuff when you're doing that.
Yeah. That reminds me of the last book we read with the adrenaline junkies.
Invincible Mask.
Invincible.
What it was, the Invincible Mask. That got them so in the moment that they just loved it. And I feel the same way, man. When I'm in the ocean or I'm underwater, you have to just pay attention.
No, this chapter and kind of some of the stuff you're saying, Adam, it really reminds me of the game, The Oregon Trail, which is obviously a real thing,
classic.
Right? So I would say 3 or 4 years ago, Ruth and I got a card game that was The Oregon Trail. So it's an actual card game you played and it's supposed to resemble the computer game. We played it for like a half an hour, maybe longer. And we probably had played like 7 or 8 rounds and didn't get even half the way any of the times. And I remember being like stupid. And I was complaining about it. And I was like, this is hard. And Ruth had said, this was how the computer game was. You never win. And, he talks about the exploration of human. And, that's one thing I've always like really appreciated about like the American West is that there's still a part of me that thinks this way. And I don't know if it's accurate, but it's almost like the people who are descendants of that are just like a harder people. And so every once in a while I'll meet someone out here who they're like 6th generation Arizonan. Basically their family came out in the mid 1800s and it's just like such a different world. And so, it's interesting because those people were leaving, they left the middle of the country or eastern portion of the country with the thought that there's a high reward. It's a lot of risk, but we could make it big on gold or, we're going to have more land there. And I think it is a great example of that human tendency to play into this scarcity loop. And I don't know if at times I've tried to think about what's the equivalent of that now. And I don't know if you'll have any thoughts of what would be, but it doesn't seem like the idea of exploration, we've kind of run out of places to expand to.
Yeah, but he kind of says that we haven't, though.
Space.
Yes, that's fair.
I don't know if it's like physical exploration as much now as it's like being able to be bold enough to create something new or create something that is valuable to other people and like putting yourself out there and being open to all the vulnerable parts of that,
Yeah.
Because it's an information economy now, right? Like, it's not about conquesting out to find a physical spice or mineral. It's about what can you create.
You got that good spice, Thomas?
Hey, man, cinnamon's pretty good. I like cinnamon.
Do you guys remember whenever we were maybe middle school, you'd be having a conversation with a friend, and it might be something along the lines of, who led the league in batting average last year in baseball? And one person would say one thing, and then one person would say the other thing. And then you just have this conversation that it just doesn't go anywhere because no one knows. But I remember distinctly the time period where you could look up the answer. And it was funny because it would just end the conversation, you know? And what it almost was, I don't know, it felt like it moved things into an era where there wasn't as much discussion.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I agree.
Those are definitely the trade-offs with technology. I think of two stories. One, this was probably 5 to 10 years ago. I don't know how I remember this, but it must have been 10 years ago, because I think I was raised in support and talking with a family, and it was a friend's parents. And the dad goes, you know, growing up, if I had a question about something, I would call my dad. Now, if my son has a question, he'll just Google it. And I thought about that and how much relationship building and connection with others are we missing because of the availability of technology.
Well, wasn't there a part in there where he talks about how there was a study where they had one group Googled it, and then the other group went and picked out an encyclopedia and read it. And that group dramatically remembered it, you know, comprehended it better than the group that just Googled it. Yeah.
That was fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other story real quick, when I worked it was 2 jobs ago, we did a focus group. It was when I worked on nightlights, and we did a focus group. We paid this third-party company to bring in just your average Joe person off the street and look at some nightlights and get feedback. And we were behind that one-way mirror, glass mirror, whatever.
Oh, that's fun.
That's awesome.
Taking notes. Yeah, you know, nightlights, life-changing stuff. But I'll never forget what our engineer noticed. He was a little bit older. He's probably in his 60s now. And, you know, we make jokes. We crap on the older generations for being old and out of touch with what's hip. And then we lament the upcoming generations and how our society's screwed because look at this next generation or whatever. This was a very positive thing, in my opinion, that he observed about the older generation focus group. There was an older group. And when I say older, it was probably 50s and older. Then there was a younger group, which was probably our age, millennials. And the proctor, whatever you want to call it, he'd be in the room. He'd be asking them questions. And then after a certain amount of questions, he'd come back into our room and say, okay, are there any follow-up questions that you want? And our engineer noticed that each group had very different interactions once the proctor left the group. In the millennial group, when he would leave, everyone, and I mean everyone, would immediately, boom, pull out their phone.
Not discuss or talk.
Zero talking.
Anything. Wow.
When the older group, he left the group, they all kept talking about the nightlights on their own. They kept interacting. And I don't necessarily have like a moral of the story, but he pointed that out. And he was older, so he's like, look at I think he really noticed it and was kind of like, isn't this kind of sad where society's, you know, kind of crapping on the younger generation? But it was a really interesting point that we become so addicted to these phones that we don't need. I was thinking of a quote earlier when we were talking about stuff. When the first iPhone came out, some negative feedback. I remember this one quote. Someone said, I'm not going to know how to message on a keyboard on a touchscreen. And Steve Jobs replied, your thumbs will learn. And he was right. And there are pros to that. There are great things that have come to that. But then there are also consequences. Consequences are positive and negative. We're able to have this podcast, and it's not even about the podcast. We're able to do this book club because of the advent of technology. I'm able to stay in touch with you all. I would have no relationship with you all if phones and video calls did not exist.
You wouldn't write us letters, Garrett?
I would probably not write letters, no. Although I did used to write letters back in the day, every now and then.
Is it just because we're not some girl you're crushing on? Is that why?
That's probably it. You know, my 8th grade crushes I would write notes to.
Oh.
Man, back in the day.
Lucky ladies.
It's actually a part in the book that he talks about the iPhone and how it's, because we don't need a calculator. We don't need a flashlight. We don't need all these other things that are in the iPhone. That has allowed us to actually cut back on pollution and things like that. That is slowly going to help
the Radio Shack,
global warming and all that. Yeah.
Do you guys remember when we converted from T9 texting to like the full keyboard? Like, I remember being kind of annoyed, to be honest. Yeah. You remember T9? It was the numbers with the 3 letters. Like, I bet the newer generations have no idea what that is.
There was a meme that Ruth showed me a while ago, and it's something spelled out in T9, and it ended up saying you only will be able to read this if you're a millennial.
Yeah. But I remember all the phones would come out with like the slide. You'd slide the phone up, and then there would be like tiny little buttons, like a million tiny little buttons. And I was just like, how do people do that? I don't know.
You just don't have thumbs like Flez. That's how you do it.
I was screwed. I was just like,
don't you wish
they're so discriminatory.
Thumbs like me.
You gotta get like some sort of Adam. You gotta get some sort of like ADA approved.
He's got like the handicap thing in his windshield, but it's just a big thumb, like a big green thumb. He gets a parking spot, but it's at the back of the parking lot instead of the front as a punishment.
There's so much in these chapters.
I know, man.
Just the last chapter on information could have been like 3 episodes.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
The whole evolution thing and exploration. And there's so much there.
All the benefits on creativity just being out there. And that's one of the main intentional reasons why I do that. A lot of like I do the unfocused walks a lot every night. Oh. I notice dramatically if I don't get my unfocused walks in, my production in other areas starts to go down a little bit. And it's nice too, because I can take Nova, but
I think Easter talks about it in Comfort Crisis, but where in America, there's the recommended exercise activities to do each week. In Japan, they recommend like 20 or 30 minutes a week of, I think they called it forest bathing. Does that sound similar?
Yeah, that sounds right.
They recommend like 20 to 30 minutes of being out in nature, even if you're in a city, going to like a city park or something like that. And we talked about this some last week, but before I jumped on here, I went for a trail run, and it just refreshed. It is always like super refreshing. And I mean, everyone's different with that too, but I think just being in open spaces, sometimes it's just nice. It's good.
Well, there's some brain science to that too, though. Like Albert Einstein loved nature. He hiked a lot, and he is like very well known. I'm listening to a book on him right now, but I also have like a picture hanging up that's kind of cool. But it's like Einstein says, look into nature, you'll find all your answers easier or whatever. But he actually produced a ton of alpha waves in his brain. There's like different states, like gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta. But yeah, no, he produced a lot of alpha waves, and there's good research which alpha waves increase creativity. It's like a calm focus. A lot of meditators have produced more alpha waves, but being out in nature has been shown to increase those. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Books Brothers podcast. Join us next week as we discuss Chapter 11, Happiness and Scarcity Brain. If you haven't yet, go out and get the books. You can better follow along with us. Through this podcast, all of us guys have personal stories of how we have either connected or reconnected with you, the listeners. This is why we push record and what our hope is with our discussions, to develop stronger relationships that enable us to be a better and healthier person. With that being said, if you have enjoyed listening or benefited from our conversations, please subscribe, give us a review, and share with a friend that you want to connect deeper with. Finally, We would love to hear your thoughts. You can reach us by email at connect@booksbrotherspodcast.com. Until next week, read, reflect, and connect.